Welcome back to rKush Malicious Compliance, where people conforming to the letter but not the spirit of a request. Now let's get orgasm with rKush. Our first story of the day was posted by Wifer 2016 with the title I ran amok at the county fair. Hello Reddit. I've been looking back at my adventures as a kid and have come to the sad, sorry conclusion that I was a bit of a brat. Now that I've confessed that, let me take you back to 1977. John Travolta and disco was setting the world on fire and I was 8 years old. I live in a largely agricultural province in Canada, and every year, BC, before the world went to hell, we would have a huge provincial fair. It had the typical animal barns, pie and craft judging, prizes for the best livestock, and the midway, and food. Lots of food. Back when I was in school, the province was keen on expanding educational and enrichment opportunities for the school kids. One thing that was included in their scheme was a free day at the fair for every kid in grade 3. I'm not sure why they chose grade 3, but there you go. The day included free admission, lunch, rides at the midway, and a treat. Pretty amazing for an 8-year-old short person, so I eagerly took my permission slip home and on the appointed day, happily boarded the bus with the other kids. We arrived at the exhibition center and were signed in. The day was going great, until we got to the barns and the cows. Now I need to step back here and tell you I was a country girl. The majority of my family lived on farms with various livestock. As a result, from the time I could toddle around the barnyard, I was taught two things. Don't piss off the animals and never walk behind a cow or a horse. Stepping back to the fair, our clueless teacher had never been taught these important rules and decided it would be a great idea to let 20 excited kids into the barns along with about 300 other excited kids from the various schools in the area. Insert freaked out animals here, and I'm not talking about bunnies and chickens. Hell no. They took us into the large animal barns with cows, horses, and 1,500 pounds Clydesdales. I knew in my soul this was a bad idea, so I hung back at the back of the crowd. The teacher, Wafer, hurry up, get a move on. Me, eyeing the 3 feet wide butts of the nearby Clydes and shaking my head. Nope. Teacher, grabbing my hand. I said join the class, now keep up. She leads us through the horse barn and into the cattle shed. At this point, the day was about to turn very interesting. The brainless woman looked around the cattle shed at the crowds of kids and teachers, spied the door she wanted, and decided it would be a brilliant idea to take a group of kiddos behind the cows. She ordered the class to line up, take hands, and skip merrily down the narrow aisle of space between the wall and about 40 cow butts. I flat refused to go, looked up at her and said nope. The equally clueless mothers who had come along to help tried to get me to go. Not happening. They coaxed. I shook my head. They tugged my hand. I dug my sneakers into the dirt floor and refused to budge. My dad and uncles loomed large in my mind, telling me never walk behind a cow. Finally, they gave up in disgust and told me to meet them on the other side and walked off, leaving 8-year-old me alone in the big A-word barn filled with random people. Compliance. Now, I was a stubborn little brat. I knew I had to get to the end of the row of cattle, but there was no way in hell I was walking behind those cows. So I walked off down the main aisle in the general direction the teacher was headed. Unfortunately, instead of finding my class at the other end, I found myself in the innovations hall. Bright lights and booths are full of fascinating things to look at. I looked around for my fellow shorties, but they were nowhere to be seen, so I shrugged and decided to have fun. I was happily looking at the display kitchen when another kid, also alone, came up to me. Kids, lost your class? Me. Yup. You? The kid. Yup. We grinned at each other, and what followed was a day that lives in infamy. We spent the next several hours exploring the fair, petting the pigs and goats. We got our free lunch, rode some rides, shared some candy floss, and to this day I have no idea how we weren't caught. At 3 p.m., the bell rang and the voice over the PA told the schools the buses were waiting. So we wandered out to the front and found our teachers. Mine, of course, was pissed LOL. Looking back, I can't blame her, but what kind of idiot tell kids to walk behind 700-pound animals with sharp hooves? I thought my day at the fair was great and was very excited to tell my parents and siblings at the super table all about it. I remember being confused at my father's rage at the teacher. Funny, but she wasn't allowed to take us on field trips after that. So, Random kid, I don't remember your name, but I remember you with great fondness. The next story is from Fear the Cowboy with the title, She Demands I Drive Out to Fix Her Broken Terminal Twice. A recent story reminded me of this. Way back in the day, 1992-ish, I worked tech support for a company that handled installations of Unix computers slash terminal slash software for accounting system for small organizations. Custom software, check printing, used a special MICR toner in off-the-shelf HP laser printers, all running off Unix, SCO, Motorola, etc. servers. We could dial into their setup and remote control the software, apply updates, etc. One day I get a call from this woman who insisted that the terminal she was using was broken. I called into the system and could see that the terminal wasn't connected at the moment, so I stepped through her making sure that it was plugged in. She insisted absolutely that it was plugged in, turned on, and the light was on and everything. After running through all the possibilities I could think of, she was still adamant that I come out and replace the terminal since it was broken. I was hesitant to make the trip since it was 225 kilometers away, would require about 5 or 6 hours of my day to make the round trip. Traffic, and a lot of snow. But my boss told me to make sure these customers were kept happy. I grabbed a new terminal out of the storage closet, some extra cabling in case it was just a bad serial cable, and my tools and headed out on the trip. At least I got paid enough per kilometer that it was well worth it. It took me about 3 hours to get there and the woman is just steamed. I walk in the door, set my back down, look at the wall where the power cord is not plugged into the wall itself. I picked up the cable, plugged it in, and lo and behold, the terminal turned on and the login prompt comes up. I look at her and she tells me that she tried that. I was literally in the office for less than 60 seconds. And since the call was not our problem, they got billed for the 6-hour service call in full. And I got 450 kilometers of mileage at like 0.25 per kilometer, was way more than the gas/mint on my old 86 Honda Accord cost me. Cue the same woman. 8 days later, she's on the phone to me screaming that my fix didn't work at all and that the terminal was broken again, and that I needed to replace the faulty terminal right now. I asked her if the terminal was plugged into the wall because remember last week when I came out and it wasn't plugged in? Are you sure? She was sure. Another 3 hours drive down there. Walk in the door and look at what I see. The power cable is laying on the floor again. I asked her if she saw that it was unplugged. She told me that she isn't technical and that I should have made sure that it was done right last time. I plugged it back and guess what? It worked. Huzzah! She was still mad because it shouldn't be happening this much. Not sure how I supposed to make that happen. I grabbed my bag, but before I left, I noticed that this small company had gotten a new receptionist. I guess before that they didn't have one. So I stopped and chatted for a bit. Asked her if she knew anything about what's going on with the plug to the terminal. She didn't have a clue, but she would keep an eye out for me. Made in another 10 days before I get another call from the lady again. I tell her I was on a service call, but I call her back in 5 minutes. A quick call to the receptionist where she said that the lady had little nephews in the room, so she ran and checked that terminal was unplugged for me. It was. She plugged it back in, and when I called back to the lady, she said it was working again, but it was still wary that it was going to go out. I told her that if it fails again, have her receptionist call me so she won't have to wait, and I can perform a reset of the connection remotely, a new feature, and get her up and running in 2 minutes. I never had to make another in-person service call to that location again. Later, I sent the receptionist a big box of Bernard Callebaut chocolates for Christmas. Our final story of the day was posted by Texas Fort Tough with the title, The Cheerleaders Can Break Dress Code Because They're School Uniforms? Guess I'm wearing mine. Someone's story about their friend wearing a skirt to school and getting bloomers reminded me of my malicious compliance in high school. Way back in 2013, I was a sophomore in high school and there was a tradition that on Fridays, the cheerleaders, football players, without their pads of course, band members and the other groups performing wore their uniforms to class. This wasn't a written tradition and only the cheerleaders and dance team's uniforms broke the dress code. Nobody batted an eye to it. I wasn't a skirt person, but I like dresses once in a while. As one can tell by my user, I grew up in Texas and it's still significantly hot in August/September. So one time, while wearing a casual sundress in September, I was pulled out of class and reprimanded because the end of my dress was 4 inches above the knee when the dress code said no shorter than 2. I pointed out the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms every Friday and how they reached mid-thigh at their longest, but was told it was okay because students can wear their official school uniforms and was sent home to change. Somehow, someone had forgotten I was on the golf team. Immediately, my mind was turning to the next Friday. The school had recently upgraded the golf team uniforms the year prior, and the girls' team uniforms consisted of a short-sleeved collared polo shirt and a skirt. If you don't know what a skirt is, it's essentially a skirt and short shorts combined. It looks like a skirt, but they essentially act like built-in bike shorts, and these efforts were short. I'd argue shorter than the average cheerleader skirt. So that next Friday, about 3 days later, to my parents' surprise, I was ready to go that morning in my golf uniform, as compared to taking a bag to keep the clothes in to change into after school. But I just said, Fridays, we can wear our uniform to class. And they accepted without question and took me to school. Well, by the second period, I was sent to the office yet again, and the first thing that the assistant principal asked me was why I would deliberately disobey her right after our last conversation and threaten in-school suspension. I never get anywhere in life by not listening, yada yada yada. When I finally had a chance to get a word in, I said, but this is my school golf uniform, and I pointed to our school's logo that was sewn into my polo shirt. You said students can wear official school uniforms to class. Why are the cheerleader uniforms okay and mine isn't? This isn't even a skirt. It's a skirt. It has pants. I still remember how pissed off she was. She stared me down for what seems like a millennium. Then she snapped and told me to get out of her office and go sit in the lobby area. That I knew what she meant and she would be calling my parents about this blatant disrespect. So I waited and played on my iPod and chatted with the nice secretary, trying to keep myself distracted because in reality, I had been trying not to cry. I had massive anxiety when it came to authority, but I still had my naive sense of injustice and I didn't just want to let this go. After about 20 minutes, she popped her head out and in a very monotone voice told me I could go back to class and to let my teachers know I had gotten permission from the front office to wear my uniform. Then she went back in and closed the door before I could even think to respond. I spent the rest of my day dealing with teachers questioning me about my outfit and 1 or 2 calling the front office to double-check my claim that I had gotten permission, and went to practice after school as normal before being carpooled back home. My dad met me at the front door with a small smirk and I asked him what in the world happened because I knew he was the go-to contact for my school, so I knew she called him. He explained that when she called and tried to get him to come to the school and get me and talked about punishment for my insubordination, he immediately began to argue with her and admitted he raised his voice quite a bit, asking why I wasn't allowed to wear my sport uniform that the school provided to me as a dress requirement at my golf practice, and even mentioned taking this to the school board and resolving this obvious favoritism. He then asked me not to do that again, but that he was proud of me and told me, I know I had told you never to start a fight, but to always fight back. I always thought physically, but you damn sure took the advice. Honestly, complying to the requests of others maliciously seems like the perfect revenge, because you'll be using their words against them. I've never not satisfied reading these stories, just wonderful witnessing justice served. And that brings us to the end of our video. Hope you reach orgasm with rKush. Thank you and good day everyone.